Well, the papers, broadly speaking, you can say, are backing Nigel Farage this morning. The Mirror strikes a negative note, a rare negative note, on his keynote speech yesterday. But as you can see, the Mail leading most of the rest of the press back. Finally, a politician who gets it. Andrew, your paper giving not one, not two, not three, but 4 cheers for Farage this morning.
Yeah, I think he's reflecting the public mood, which is dismay. People are fed up. They've heard the Tories say they'd sort it out, Labour say they'd sort it out. Since this crisis began, when I remember the Tory Home Secretary was Sajid Javid, going back all the way to 2018, when a few boats crossed the channel, and he said this is a major emergency, and nothing has been done to stop it. The Tories were going to stop the boats, Labour were going to smash the gangs. They haven't. This is a serious, proper policy. They're no longer Reform talking about turning the boats back, because they know they can't. But they have a simple plan that when illegal migrants get here, and they are illegal, they're going to be put into detention camps. They'll have 6 months to go voluntarily. They can be paid to go voluntarily. That's what America does. We've done it before. Or they'll be deported. And I think people will be cheering. We're full up. There's no room for all these people. Schools are overcrowded. The NHS is straining at the seams. There's not enough housing, even though Antia Rayner's now got a third property, the Housing Secretary. And it's just, well, she's got 3. She's got one in the constituency, one in...
One is Michael Gove's old place, isn't it?
Yeah, but she's still living in 3 properties. Grace and Favour. But I think at last, some of the details got to be fleshed out. People are thinking, somebody gets it.
Did you feel, watching the speech yesterday, and I'm sure you watched it as it went out live, did you feel, as some of the commentators are saying this morning, on the right, that you were looking at Nigel Farage moving a notable step closer to number 10?
I did. Yeah. I did. And the Tories are saying today, oh, they're stealing our clothes. No, the Tories are not saying they'll come out of the European Court on Human Rights. The Tories are talking about they might, and they're not saying they're going to come out of get rid of the Human Rights Act, which is what Farage is saying. This is big changes, and it's going to put the government in a lot of difficulty, because I think people are thinking, what are they going to do? What's Labour's latest plan? They're going to change the way appeals are looked at, so they won't be using judges, be a panel of experts. Yawn, boring, more legal solutions from Keir Starmer, which won't get anywhere near the problem.
Even simmering.
No. I mean, I think Andrew's right. I think that Labour have completely lost the narrative on the small boats, crisis, I suppose, because there are people still dying in the Channel. I do think it's hugely overblown, and it has seized public attention in a way that I worry is irreparable. I'm frightened that this speech from Nigel Farage has come a couple of years before the next election. We're 3 years away. How much more can the rhetoric be ramped up before then? Because this, to me, is sort of an election speech. This is sort of a 6 months before, perhaps, and, you're looking at someone who probably is going to be leader of the opposition, if not Prime Minister, maybe not the next election, but the one after that. And actually, this plan is undeliverable. So what's frightening is you're going to ramp up the British public into a fever, and then to what end? Because you're not going to be able to introduce US-style deportations. For one thing, logistically, we don't have the same makeup as America. We don't have the same land border with France. We have a channel which cannot be policed in the same way. And we do actually have obligations to countries like Afghanistan because we invaded them, 2 decades ago, and actually we made it impossible for a number of people to live there. So we do have to take them in.
You say it's undeliverable. Obviously, Farage is basically saying he'll bulldoze his way through objections like that. He'll just make it happen, force majeure.
But I don't understand how that will happen. There's 150 kilometres of coastline. I'm actually just being practical. I can't even work myself up into a fever about this, because it's just so undeliverable to halt channel crossings. If you had safe passage over the channel, and you were taking in a certain number of asylum seekers, and then you had returns agreements to deport the people who weren't eligible for that process, I would understand. But you can't build a moat. But
the point is, there is no deterrent at the moment to these people crossing the channel, none whatsoever. They're put in hotels at public expense. They're given a bit of cash. It doesn't happen in France, doesn't happen in other countries, certainly doesn't happen in Denmark, where you can confiscate their jewellery.
You live in camps in France. You'd never get away with that here.
They'll be told, if you cross the channel, you're going to be put in a detention camp and then you'll be deported. That is a major deterrent. So it's going to stop the crossings, and then they can start the process of getting rid of the ones who are here already, who shouldn't be here, and there's hundreds of thousands of those, and they've got to go. This is a major deterrent. In the way I think Rwanda would have been a deterrent of the sort, this will be a massive deterrent.
So what do you think, though, is going to happen with this? Because obviously this is further than any party has gone, isn't it, when it comes to taking this line on it? Are other parties now going to look and think, well, actually, we need to get tougher? Because the issue is, as much as you say it's not feasible, that is never going to be proved, is it? Unless they get into power and then they try to do it and it doesn't work out.
But this is what I worry about, because we're talking about, you know, Farage yesterday saying he's going to deport 600,000 illegal migrants. I mean, who are these illegal migrants? You know, a lot of these people, it was determined last year, are people with indefinite leave to remain and they just don't have a British passport. You know, these are, you know, Americans, which I suppose the right wing wouldn't traditionally see as a quote-unquote illegal migrant. You know, are we going to have a witch hunt throughout the streets? Are we going to start pointing people out who don't look quote-unquote British and say, show me your papers? You know, what is the end goal here? You're not able to deport nearly 1 million people.
There's certainly going to have to be a great deal, Farage pretty much acknowledged this yesterday, of nose-holding in applying this policy if he does win the election and if he tries to put it into place. For example, and this is all over the front page of the Telegraph this morning, basically bribing the Taliban to take Afghan refugees back. Now, the British government doesn't recognise the Taliban. We don't have any kind of formal relationship with them, but he is saying that he will actually pay them per head, per capita, to take back people who've escaped the Taliban regime. They have told the Telegraph obviously doesn't name their Taliban spokesman. They say, they quote a Taliban spokesman as saying, yep, we can do business with Nigel Farage. He's not like the rest of your leaders. We feel he's a bloke who talks sense, and yes, we will take money, but only, it's not actually as a kind of a bribe, they say.
So not payments, but they said they would accept aid.
Aid.
I mean, it's not exactly a place that's friendly for women, is it? And so, you know, that was, I think, what was frightening yesterday about Farage. He was saying that he would also detain women and children who were on those boats. And, you know, Afghanistan right now, you cannot go to university. You are at the behest of the men who are running that regime. It's highly likely that women would need to flee. You know, I just sort of think the uncomfortable adoption of the US foreign policy, which, by the way, doesn't work, which is we're not going to intervene in foreign wars. We're not going to engage with countries who are, you know, under diplomatic pressure. You obviously have to be engaged with these countries. You know, if you were having... God, this is going to sound so unfeasible. But if you were having some kind of relationship with Afghanistan where, you said the Taliban should not be in place and actually women should be free there, then perhaps you wouldn't have a problem of women fleeing that country.
But he says...
Farage's point again, isn't it? Look, we can't be the international...
No, he says British interests first,
of the world.
British interests first.
British interests first. There's many people in this country who feel deeply uncomfortable that so many men, young men, are coming into this country undocumented. We don't know where they're from. We don't know what's in their heart, if any of them have got bad intentions. We know there have been problems...
stoking that fear is so dangerous.
But it's because that fear is already there, Ava, and he says he's going to get to grips with it, and that's why people will support him.
And we have to say, just quickly, that Germany is actually already... They're ahead of Farage on this. They've already deported 81 Afghan men convicted of crimes directly to Afghanistan. Yeah. They sent them straight back to the Taliban-controlled country, even though Germany doesn't recognise the Taliban.
How many white men were deported from Britain for sexual crimes last year? Because, you know, I don't see what difference it would make if you... Do not get me wrong, this asylum seeker who's alleged to have touched or assaulted a young girl in Epping is abhorrent, and, you know, that person should be detained.
Well, let's not talk about that particular case because it's still ongoing and it continues today.
I just say alleged.
Okay.
But, you know, if you think about the rape conviction rate last year, it was 4%. What if you manage to convict an asylum seeker because they have come here and done something heinous? Is that going to change all of the white men in this country who go out every single day and do commit violence against women and girls? You know, I'd love to see the right care about violence against women and girls in the round, in total. And then I would believe them that this wasn't just a racist trope that they were using because they don't like other nationalities being here.
On the broader point of the general thrust of the speech that was made yesterday, isn't basically this what you get when you have a series of failed governments? In terms of immigration. I mean, we've interviewed, in terms of the small boats crisis, we have interviewed Conservative minister after Conservative minister until the last election when they got chucked out. And since then, we've interviewed Labour minister after Labour minister, and their comments about dealing with the small boats crisis, I would categorise and summarise as lame. It's just been a series of lame, feeble excuses, and all we can see at the moment is the numbers rising.
Farage's policies, outlined yesterday, are a direct result of the absolute contempt with which the British public now regard our asylum and refugee system. It is contemptuous. We have no government. The Tories were hopeless. This lot are hopeless. So Yvette Cooper announced with huge publicity a few weeks ago the one-in, one-out policy. And we learnt yesterday 100 refugees have been detained so far. They're still here. And how many have come in that time? 3,600. Yeah. It ain't one in, one out. It's thousands in and one out if you're lucky.
And isn't that the issue, though, that people are looking and they're seeing a system that is in crisis, that's out of control, and they feel that not enough is being done. And here they're being told, well, actually, we will do something about it. And we spoke to Government Minister Matthew Pennycook yesterday about Labour's policy on this and whether they were doing enough. And he said, yes, we are doing enough, but you've got to wait to see the results come in. But actually, people want to see action being taken on this because they are worried about numbers and they are worried about the amount of money that's being spent, aren't they?
And they should be, because it's billions that is being spent on hotels every single year, and the people who are in those hotels don't want to be there. But this is why I said at the beginning of this conversation, Labour have totally lost the narrative on asylum seekers, and what you're going to have is Labour are chasing reform on the we need to deport everyone. At the next election, you're going to have a battle between the Green Party and whatever your party decides to call itself, with Zara Sultana and Jeremy Corbyn, against Labour and reform. And who's going to come out winner? You're going to have split Labour, who will cease to exist, and you're going to have a reform versus these smaller parties who are in government. Like, Labour need to get it together and harness the narrative of their members.
Do you agree with her, Andrew, that actually I think this is what you're saying, is that after all the huffle and buffle of yesterday with Labour calling it a pie-in-the-sky policy and the Conservatives saying, oh, he's stealing our clothes, that was their holding position. Do you feel that in the next few weeks and months, both Labour and the Tories will actually come up with something broadly similar to what was said yesterday?
Well, Labour MPs are very nervous about immigration. If you look at the polls now, it suggests that immigration and illegal migration is almost the #1 issue, along with the cost.
It could lose them in the election.
Without a doubt. Yeah. I talked to a Labour MP yesterday. He said, we will lose the election heavily if we don't have a much better response to what Farage is announced.
They'll chase reform?
Yeah, but there's no way Lawyer Starmer is going to take Britain out of the European Court of Human Rights, and Lawyer Starmer is going to take us out of the Human Rights Act. He's a lawyer first and foremost, rather than a leader, and that's a big problem they've got.
But you say that, but you know, no one would have conceived that David Cameron would have taken us out of the European Union. Do you know what I mean?
Well, he didn't mean to, did he?
No, sure.
He had a referendum, and the result wasn't what he wanted.
Can get out of control.
Absolutely. Then. I do think that Starmer could get pigeonholed. You know, he could start walking down a road where he realises that actually the Reform are winning the argument, and then he does offer us a potential referendum on the ECHR.
I don't think people will trust. I just don't think people will trust them. I think I mean, I know they've only been 13 months and they keep going about what they inherited, but they've come up with nothing. Labour and the Tories come up with nothing, and this reform proposal, you can pick holes in some of it, but it's a serious attempt to get to grips with it.
OK, shall we change the subject? Long-term borrowing by the British government is approaching a 27-year high, according to this morning's papers. And this phrase I've never heard before is being used. They're calling it a moron premium. Have you ever heard of that? A moron premium?
It's a bit awkward, isn't it?
Moron premium is a phenomenon, I'm quoting the Telegraph here, whereby investors, foreign investors, charge countries more to borrow because of what they judge to have been previous policy mistakes. And what they're basically saying is that the British government is having to pay near record rates to borrow because of Rachel Reeves's perceived failings.
She's only been in for a year. I mean, I don't think that they've spent wisely, and I don't think that they've allocated wisely. I would have loved to have seen them spend a lot more rather than make cutbacks. But, you know, I'd love them to do an Attlee-style expenditure, which will frighten people at home. But, I mean, she's only had a year in. You know, it was 14 years of total financial mismanagement before that, surely, that contributed.
But they've whacked us with the big... I mean, the tax burden was the high of 70 years when the Tories were kicked out, and then she whacked us with even more taxes. We saw only yesterday... 80 or is it 90,000 jobs have gone in the hospitality industry because of the rise in national insurance. And we've got a budget coming up in November, and it's clear taxes have to rise even more, and that's why borrowing costs are going up. And people have to understand when borrowing costs go up, that's costing everybody watching this programme, because that's the cost the government has to pay to service its debt. And the debt is astronomically high, and every day the cost of servicing that debt is getting higher and higher, which is going to put a tax up even more.
And it's a real worry for people. Unemployment set to hit a 4-year high. You know, there's a lot of things going on with the economy at the moment.
The benefits bill has reached a 6-year high.
The growth that all of this was, you know, supposed to be pinned on, wasn't it? That was the main aim, was to get the growth, to be able to see us through this.
Which
that
was always a mistake. You can't predicate an entire budget off of we're going to see economic growth when there's been no sign of growth above 0.1% over the last couple of years. You know, you can't magic it. You have to spend to grow. And there was actually an exciting point in the budget where they were talking about they were going to build huge renewable energy farms, and that was a way to get people into work and then get people, you know, moving around the country. Where is this expenditure? Where are the houses that are going up? You know, we are literally stagnating, and while we're stagnating, the debt is rising.
Yeah, and also it's hitting people in the pocket, isn't it? We're about to hear later on the announcement that energy bills are expected to rise yet again this winter. The regulator Ofgem's going to announce at 7 o'clock that the average dual fuel tariff will increase by £17 from the beginning of October. Although lower bills were forecast, Ed Miliband had said, hadn't he, on this programme, actually, that bills were going to come down. This is more bad news for people.
£300 a year.
When so many people are already in fuel poverty.
Yeah, that was what Ed Miliband told us, all this mad dash to net zero. £300 a year. They're now saying, oh, maybe not in this Parliament. So that means, what, in the next Parliament, when we'll have a completely different government?
So they're not building, though. That's the problem, you know, that they were meant to have... You know, Miliband was meant to have this huge brief where he was going to go out and he was going to build solar farms and wind farms, and he's not been given...
Is that because the money's not there, then? So it all comes back to decisions
I do think we also have to remember that the cash boundaries are arbitrary and they are choices, right? You don't... You know, the government aren't actually as hemmed in with spending as they like to project, or the way that they did project with the £22 billion black hole. You know, if you are spending on infrastructure, actually, you probably aren't going to see a run on the gilts in the way that Liz Truss crashed the economy, right? It's just about ambition, and it's about what a government chooses to do.
But you've got to take people with you, don't you, though? Because, you know, the markets make decisions on how they feel you're managing the situation, and that's when they talk about things like the moron premium, isn't it? If they think that mistakes have been made and the situation in the economy is due to that.
Yeah. But we're stagnating. What are we going to do in the meantime? Just sort of sit here? You know?
Well, what I'd like to... I mean, who knows? But the vast majority of political and economic commentators, and yourself included, Andrew, are predicting that the way that she's going to deal with this in the short term is to raise taxes in November. What taxes are going to go up, do you think?
Sin taxes.
Capital gains.
Yep.
That's for sure. They could be putting it on property purchase sales. There could be property taxes. And we see, what's his name? Torsten, what's his surname? Is it Bell? Torsten Bell is being brought in to help write the budget. This is a man who's argued before he was MP, getting rid of the triple lock on pensions, cutting pensions, taxes across the board. So just...
Lifting the two-child benefit cap?
Absolutely.
Income tax? Or will she stay away from that?
I think she'll stay away from income tax.
OK.
I think it'll be capital gains. Is she going to go for national insurance again? Been a disaster, in my view.
Yeah, she'll freeze the thresholds.
She will.
On income tax, and so that's how you'll feel it.
OK.
So people ordinarily would expect... So more people will go into the 40p tax rate, and that's nurses and teachers.
Well, all this is very important, but we really should talk about the most important story, we think, of the last 12 hours that's broken. Taylor Swift's engagement.
Who does he play for?
Now, Ava, you were saying that this was quite an emotional announcement, wasn't it?
So embarrassed to admit to this.
Sorry, I've just outed you live on television as well, haven't I?
Do you know what it is? I think I've grown up with her. You know what I mean? I think a lot of women my age are so emotional about this because they started loving her when, you know, we were 12, 13, and now you've seen her go all the way through all of these horrible English men that she dated and then settled down with an American. Honestly, one of my biggest disappointments. I cannot believe we nearly had her living here forever, and we lost it.
And how emotional were you at the news then, Andrew?
I didn't know anything about it, so I opened the newspapers this morning. I am not emotional. I do know who she is, of course I do, but I can honestly say I don't know any of her records.
Well, you're not alone in Curmudgeon Corner.
No.
Andy on email. Morning, Andy. He says, what's exciting about someone you'll never know getting engaged? Why can't these celebs keep their private lives to themselves? I'm not interested. But the thing is, particularly, as you say, women of a certain generation sort of almost live their lives through Taylor Swift, don't they? In terms of identifying with what she writes about in the lyrics. I know my daughter adores her because of the lyrics of her, not so much the image, but how she writes.
Her lyrics are extraordinary, and I think that she's just so unafraid to be unlikable, and I think that's what a lot of women like about her. She doesn't have this sort of veneer of perfection.
Yeah.
Most pop stars
She
do.
actually did Rachel Reeves a favour. Was it this year or last year when she did all those
boosted the
concerts?
economy.
Because
She
it
did,
actually
you're right.
boosted the
Yes.
economy.
And actually, the President of the United States, none other than Donald Trump, has given his reaction to the news.
Oh.
Should we have a listen?
Terrific.
There we
That is
go.
a U-turn and a half, isn't it?
Got the endorsement.
He slagged her off something
Has he?
rotten in the past.
I mean,
No, you wouldn't know, Andrew.
I wouldn't. No, I don't follow it. And she's marrying a footballer, American footballer. I do
just
know
think that journalists should be ashamed of themselves. What are you asking the President of the United States that question for? I mean, there's a war. You know, there's multiple wars on.
But we were saying earlier that actually, we'll move on from this in a second, Andy. But we were saying earlier, this is the American equivalent of royalty, isn't it? I mean, if you set aside Hollywood, on the Hollywood star system, I mean, Taylor Swift and him, a hugely successful American football player,
It's being described as the biggest showbiz wedding in history. I mean,
Yes.
I thought Taylor and Burton might be a rival for that, you might have thought.
But this tweet has already
in
had
modern times.
25
She said
million...
who?
25 million likes, which just shows globally how big the news
She is a phenomenon.
Yeah, there was a lot of videos on TikTok yesterday of, like, young women crying. I say young women, they were my age. Women my age crying.
Oh, now listen, talking of young women, there's something else in the story today. PE kits, putting girls off sport. This is a survey that's been commissioned. Changes to school PE kits could help encourage more girls to take part in school sports. That's according to a poll of 14 to 16-year-old girls. Nearly three-quarters say they're more likely to participate in lessons. 74% they'd enjoy it more if the kits were more comfortable. I don't know what you were like.
Can I just... How do they have a choice about whether they take part in PE? We didn't have any say in it when we were at school.
You just had to do it.
You just got on with it.
You'd have to do it anyway, whatever.
Shorts
the
or
uniforms.
skirts? We were in shorts, of course.
Would it make a
ECHR,
difference?
probably, Andrew.
Yeah.
What are your memories of PE kit? Was it a problem?
Yeah, we were trying to talk about this before. I would say, is it a skirt issue? But I don't remember having... I think I wore a skirt with shorts underneath it, which was absolutely fine. I mean, I guess it is uncomfortable, isn't it? But school just is miserable.
You just
So
have
I
to
guess
put
you
up
just
with
got to
things
get
like
on
that.
with it. Yeah.
Aren't there more important things to worry about in school, like getting them off their computers and
There
off their
are.
devices and reading more and getting better exam results?
However, the only thing I would say is it's really important that we encourage young people to be physically
Fit.
active from an early age, isn't it? And if there's barriers to them doing that, we kind of want to make sure that actually everyone wants to take part?
Yeah, I mean, if it was just trousers universally as an option, I'm sure everyone would get involved. But then there are some women who wouldn't be able to wear trousers. They'd have to wear a skirt. I don't know. I don't know.
It's very this century. I mean, the reasons quoted by girls for feeling uncomfortable in their current kit are, and I quote, lack of choice. As you say, we didn't get any choice.
No.
Uncomfortable fabrics, shapeless design.
Oh, come on.
Suitability for different weather conditions, sweat absorption and visibility.
So a boy's going to start whinging about shorts next?
Do you know what the
don't know.
problem
We
is,
will
though,
see.
with this? Is the difference between when we went to school is that everything is now filmed, and that's the problem. You know, if you're out on PE...
That's a
You don't want to be
really
seen in a bad outfit.
Exactly.
Maybe that's
really
it.
good point.